The issue came up today about how to make papers or how to write papers. And one of the things I always talk about, like an analogy, is making a cake. You can do this with pretty much any topic or any type of food item. But I like to always talk about ingredients and making a cake. And while we can make a cake look really good, you may eat it and it's not all that great. So some students will come back and say, well, the paper is written well, it's grammatical, but maybe the sources are really bad, meaning the ingredients, okay? So a lot of professors will go to the end of a paper and they'll look at the ingredients called references or sources and they'll see what the quality is. So if I sit there and say, okay, well, you have a 10-page paper and you have 20 sources, I go, wow, that's a lot. So on the surface, I might say, well, that looks like a really good paper. It looks like a really good cake. And then when I start looking at it, I'm like, these are all websites, and not even good websites like Wikipedia, Course Hero, just really bad websites. So then the question is, well, are there good websites? Maybe you're researching a company and you need to use what the company says, and then maybe some journals to complement that, like good, solid academic ones. And so we get the ingredients, and so ingredients can be a mix at point, but they all work together and make a good paper. So when I talk about how to use these ingredients and how professors look at that back page, if they sit there and see a bunch of good sources, they tend to go back to the beginning with a very positive view of your analysis. That means you use good ingredients, good sources, you've mixed it in there, and things work a lot better. Then the question is, how did you mix it? Okay, how did you put the ingredients together? What, did you just put them all in the first paragraph and the rest of the paper is empty? Did you space them out, one in each paragraph? You tried to anchor each paragraph and develop each paragraph fully, or did you just sit there and dump it at the first part and forget the second part? Or, people look at that. They also look at how you use the ingredients and develop it. How did you put it into the cake mold, so to speak? Did you sit there and say, okay, here's a paragraph of 2 sentences and I cite it, but how did you develop after it? How did you actually develop the cake afterwards? Okay. For example, if I'm taking a cake and I frost it or coat it with the icing, it could be, you say, well, that icing's really good. But if I just sit there and slap it all on the top and it looks like it was slapped on there, you might say it's good icing, but it really wasn't put on the cake correctly. It wasn't spread out. Some parts are missing it, doesn't look uniform, it's not consistent. So there's all these factors as well. So when looking at this, pick an analogy that works for you. Some of you are automotive, use a car. I don't know how it would look, but if you use good parts on a car, then the car might last longer or work better, right? So, but there's a lot of military people can do this too, okay? I mean, whatever you're in, make sure you use the analogy that works. And the reason we use it is to remind ourselves that things, there are better ways of doing things, and that while we may just whip something out or check mark it off, it might not be the best way to do it. Just because someone told you how to dribble a basketball with 2 hands, and you say, well, I'm really good at that, that doesn't mean that you're bouncing the ball correctly. Okay? And when someone does correct you, take it with a grain of salt. What are they saying? Why are they saying it? Ask all the 4 W's or the 5 W's or 5 H's or whatever they call it now. Uh, Look at those things and say, well, yeah, I didn't know I was doing that wrong, but they were nice enough to correct it. A lot of times, the professors that you get the most feedback are critical or constructive, as we call it. Those are professors that really do care. They tend to be the ones that move you the best or they move you the most. And you really need to take time and look at that. So while we may not like it, because I always argue people don't like criticism, and calling it constructive criticism doesn't make it any better, you do need to look at it that way. So if you're making the cake and you've always made it that way, it may be a great cake and you may be a lucky person. But even then, look at how you can improve making that cake. So I appreciate it and thank you all for the topic.